In the last episode, I finished cleaning excess caulk off of the sump, created a bulletproof automatic top-off mount made out of ABS and PVC, and installed it onto the sump, made a bit of progress on the plumbing, painted the sump, and continued the wiring. In this episode, I'll continue the wiring, finish the sump, finish the light bar setup, and mount an Apex controller. Now here's an example of why the hole was cut out. So when the wires are inserted into the apex, they have somewhere to go. And I've also pre-wired this, so the distribution blocks are ready to be installed and wired in. And now what I have to do is put the sump in the cabinet and drill a hole somewhere around here. So now with the sump in place, what my plan is all the cables, from the heater and the pump and the skimmer and all that are actually going to come over the rim. They're going to follow the trim of the tank, and then what they're going to do is they're going to bend back and come into the back of the cabinet. So what I have to do is I have to mark the back of the cabinet and drill about an inch or an inch and a half hole into the back of the cabinet, so all those cords can be hidden and come right to the back and right into the Apex EV8. So what I have here are what they are is that you put them on the sides of industrial racks, and you would feed the wires through, and then this will slide back, and that's where you actually hide the wires. So what I've done is kind of arrange these to be put on the back of the sump, like so. So there'll be one, and there'll be two. And the only thing that I've done to these so far is I've cut out a piece of ABS plastic and mounted that to the edge. So when it's mounted, there isn't just a hole there. So all the wires in the back of my sump, and I'll use the heater caddy as an example. When the heaters are in place, the wires will bend over and be inserted into these holes, and then you won't see any more wires. And then the hole I drilled on the back of the cabinet, where the sump's going to rest, the cables are just going to come out and go to that hole. So use this as an example. All these cables will just go there and you won't see anything. So what I have to do is I marked this number 2. There's a little bit extra on this side, so when I put them both together, if I put one at the end, all I have to do is just cut this little bit off and then double side sticky tape them on and paint the bottom, and I think the sump is completely done. So I'll use this as an example. So this would fit nicely in here. I take this strip. So from the front, this is what you'll see. So right here from the apex, I'll have my pH, salinity, and a heater, 2 heaters, and a pump. and I'll see you guys in a bit. And this is what it looks like before I clean up the wiring, just to give you an idea of exactly what that's going to look like when the EB8s are installed. The bottom of the EB8 is actually going to come right to that line. And so the next thing I have to do is I have to drill the inside of the cabinet right here. I pretty much have to cut this area out, because at the top of the tank, this area is, I designated this area for where the overflow comes down. The return line, when it comes down, this has to be cut out. So what I'm going to do is drill 4 holes and then cut this out with the jigsaw. So now that's cut out. So when the tank is in place, that's where the overflow will be, straight down into the sump. And it's getting about that time where it's starting to get dark, so I may call it a day. So what I'm working on next is on the top of the cabinet where my light rack is going to go, the poles are going to go through this hole and come out of this hole. And so what I need is a 2x4 in the middle here to span this distance. And then I need to cut a hole in that so when the pole does come through, there's another 2x4 here with a hole in it. So the pole doesn't, you know, arc out like that. So I just need to cut this piece of 2x4 and install it in the middle. All right. So I'm gonna stack them something like this and screw them into place. So instead of trying to measure all this out, which is just going to be almost impossible, I just put the piece of wood in here, make sure it's up against the other piece of wood, and then sort of just mark it with a pen where I need the hole to be. Like so. And then when I take the wood out, I'll just drill those 2 holes, and I'll also mark it. After wrestling with this for a while, here's a good example of what's happening here. As the top hole goes in for the light bar, it's just going to go straight down, stop there. and the wires are going to come out. And then the second part, the light bar is right here. Let's move it straight in, stop there. And then the third hole of the light bar, just like that. I'll get a top side view of it too. So here's the top side. This is where the overflow is going to be, just for reference. So the pole will go through. As you can see, it goes straight through all the way to the bottom. And eventually I'm going to get, I'm not sure exactly what they're called, but they're electrical pipe clamps. And they'll just be inserted here with I think a Phillips head, so I can raise it and lower it whenever I want. Everything works well. Perfect. And the paint has dried. Now it's time to take off the tape. And just a little cleaning up to do. So now, when you see the sump from the front, you don't see any of that nasty caulk. You can see a black insert there. Oh, well, thank you. So, as of right now, the only thing I have left to do on the sump, if I'm going to do it, is paint another box here. But you know what? Besides that,
drums please.
Like, the sump is done. The sump is finally done. So the next thing I'm working on is the apex display. When I originally built this cabinet, I kind of wanted to have the fascia on the front and then just like a little hole where you can actually access the apex controller. Sorry about the noise, they're doing some roofing, so it's going to be quite loud. Before all this happened, I measured this out and I knew that the apex controller might fit. I knew it would be close, but I didn't actually know it would be this close. So with the apex all the way up to the top, all the way to the side, it actually fits in there perfectly. But what I need to do is I need to bump up this controller so it sits flush. So when I put the fascia on, if I cut a hole out of the fascia to access these controls, that's sort of what I'm going for. So I need to measure the distance between the controller and the wood, and then make a little piece of wood, screw that in, and then put the aqua controller display on top of that. And then with the cord, I'm just going to drill a hole and then come out of here and then follow the top all the way to the apex brain. So this is going to take a little while and a little bit of measuring, but this is what I'm starting on now. And with the wood cut out, that'll fit in there. Or is it this way? As you can see, it is flush. And then with the controller in place, fits flush on the bottom, and it will fit flush on the top. And then when I lay my fascia over that, I'm going to cut a hole in the fascia. I actually made a template for it. I don't know if I'm going to keep this, but so in the fascia I would cut out this hole, this hole, this hole, and this hole, and then that would go right over top of the controller. So basically the only thing you would see is 1, 2, 3, 4 holes. This diamond would be a hole. So something like that. And I have the wood to cut the doors and that will be a future project.
I hope you are enjoying the videos, and if you are, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. It's free and a great way to support the channel.